Let's get more on this. We can talk to Scott Lucas, who is a professor of international politics at Birmingham University in the United Kingdom. Scott, good to speak to you again. Are you surprised that the FBI has already completed its report and handed it over to the Senate? Because even before we heard this, we've heard from the Democrats complaining that they're concerned that this FBI investigation is too narrow.
I'm far from surprised. This was never going to be an investigation. It was always going to be a political cover sheet for the White House and the Republican leadership to try to get Kavanaugh through, despite the sexual assault allegations from 3 women. The White House told the FBI who it could and could not interview. 2 of the 3 accusers, Christine Ford and Julie Swetnick, were not interviewed. The second accuser was interviewed, but Deborah Ramirez said that the names she gave of people who could corroborate her story were not approached. Multiple people have come forward in the past week to talk about Brett Kavanaugh's alleged drinking, including a possible link to sexual assaults. They were not interviewed. In other words, the FBI is pretty much being used, or the attempt is to use it by the Senate leadership to say, look, there's nothing to see here. Why can't we just confirm this judge? And let's just make all these accusations go away.
Why, for people who are not familiar with the FBI investigations into things like this, why is it that they are being restricted in this way by the White House? Do they not have the jurisdiction to do a more independent report?
No, because the White House is in control of the Justice Department, and the Justice Department is in turn the agency that oversees the FBI. The FBI can only operate according to the mandate that it receives. So individual agents could not go beyond what the Justice Department set as the limits. So it was made very clear from the outset, when this investigation was forced on the White House last week, that they were not going to talk a lot about Brett Kavanaugh's life. They really don't want to talk about the drinking because it's a sensitive point, and they really don't want to talk to a couple of the accusers. 1, because Christine Ford came across too credible last week, and 2, because Julie Swetnick's allegations, which I won't detail here, are very, very graphic. But most interesting, the FBI did not interview Brett Kavanaugh this week. In other words, they weren't even allowed to go back to him and talk about his testimony and say, look, does this stand up, or do we need to consider where there are holes in your testimony?
So what happens next? Is it like the last week basically hasn't happened, and that hearing hasn't happened, and the people that have come forward to say that he misled his representation of drinking in university hasn't happened? It just goes ahead as planned?
For the White House and the Senate leadership, including Mitch McConnell, who you saw there, that's what they hope. They hope they can sweep this all away. Now, there have been some disruptions to this. Donald Trump complicated this when he made fun of Christine Ford and mocked her at a rally on Tuesday. And the reason why that's a complication is politics takes over, and Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation comes down to 3 Republican senators: Jeff Flake, who demanded the FBI investigation last week in order for this to proceed, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Susan Collins of Maine. The Republicans have only a 51-49 majority. So if 2 of those 3 senators say, look, we're still not comfortable with this, we're not comfortable in the investigation, we're not comfortable with Kavanaugh, he might not be confirmed. It really comes down to those 3 people, despite all the things that we should be talking about around these very serious claims.
Not long before we find out. Scott Lucas from Birmingham University in the United Kingdom, many thanks.